better than yesterday.
Hello viewers, thank you for tuning in today. We are students at St. John's University School of Law, here to just give you some general insight on everything law school, the applications process, what life is like as a law student, and things of that nature. I guess first we'll just start with a brief introduction of ourselves, just so you can get to know who we are, and then more of this will be an interactive process where you can all do Q&A, and we will try to give you as much information as possible. So.
Hi guys, my name is Nicole Camacho. I am currently a 2L, so I am from Puerto Rico, born and raised, and I started my undergraduate degree over there as well. And then in 2011, I transferred to Pace University here in New York. After I graduated in 2013, I worked for 4 years, and it was at that point when I actually applied to law school and came to St. John's.
Hi everyone, my name is Antonia. I'm a third year student here at St. John's. I am from Albany, New York, which is upstate. I went to a small private school called Siena College, which is located near Albany. I was a college softball pitcher, and I studied business management and pre-law at Siena.
And hello everyone, I'm Charles. I'm a third year at St. John's, originally from Washington, D.C., and raised in Bowie, Maryland. I went to undergrad at Syracuse University, where I studied political science and writing. Worked as a paralegal in D.C. for a few years after that, and I'm now a third year at St. John's.
Stories? Yeah.
Stories.
So like Charles said, I mean, we're just going to give our stories of how we ended up choosing St. John's, but feel free to ask questions throughout.
You're getting a shout out from Maryland.
Oh. Yay! But yeah, feel free to ask questions throughout. There's no need to wait, like Charles said, until the end, and we'll answer them as best to our knowledge. So as I mentioned, I was actually working for about 4 years before I applied to law school, and my bachelor's degree is in finance. So law has been something that was always in the back of my head, because I come from a family of lawyers. Like my mom, my dad, my grandfather, and my aunt are all lawyers. But at the point where I was trying to decide what to do my bachelor's on, I wasn't really sure like what I wanted to do, and I wasn't sure if I would be going to law school because I wanted to do it. So I got my bachelor's degree, and then decided it was the right time after 4 years to go to law school. And through that process, I mean, and you guys feel free to jump in, there were a lot of different things that I took into consideration. First thing I was trying to decide was where I wanted to start practicing law once I graduated law school. So as always, I encourage every prospective law student to apply broadly, but also kind of stay true to what you want to do. And I knew I wanted to start practicing in New York, so I applied broadly, but within New York. And I looked at scholarship opportunities, because we know that cost is something that you also want to take into consideration with the location. And St. John's is very great and forthcoming with their scholarship opportunities, so that's something that definitely attracted me to them. But after the application process, I was not 100% sure I wanted to come to St. John's, but what really was like the tick at the end that said you have to come here was actually admitted student stay. So that brings me to the point of always visit a law school that you're interested in, because you might have an idea of what that law school is and how you think you're going to fit in, but it won't be until you actually see it and interact with professors and prospective students and current students that you actually know. And
So, Nicole, we have a question, which I think is a good one. Why is it important to pick a law school in the place that you want to go to school? So somebody asked, for instance, they're from here, but they would prefer to practice law in Colorado. What is the benefit to going to law school in the location, the city or the state in which you'd like to practice?
Sure. So the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is the connections that you build when you're in law school. The alumni network is usually going to be, majority of it is going to be around the area where the law school is. And you want to start building those relationships from 1L year and try to get those contacts because when it comes to the time to pick an internship or find a job, those are the people that, along with professors and like career development office, you're going to be reaching out to when asking for advice and even like tapping them on the shoulder to see if they have any opportunities that you could go and work with them.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, the main reason to think about the location when applying for law school is just the proximity and the networking combination, like Nicole was talking about. I mean, it's a lot easier to, go meet with an alumni in the city or something like that, going to school like St. John's, than it would be, going somewhere else, knowing that you want to work in New York City. So that's something to consider.
I'll echo just a little bit. I also think like typically students do get their first job where they go to law school based on what Nicole and Charles said about the alumni network. But something I've also found useful is I'm going to be practicing in New York, and St. John's has a lot of New York related classes as well. So you do learn the law of where you're going to practice, and that can be really beneficial too.
And you're going to the law department for New York City?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you have a career goal that's related to a location, it can help to go to that area.
Yeah, so for example, I took New York criminal practice my second year, first semester, and then I used all the law that I learned that summer at the New York City Law Department. So it's really helpful to know the law before you start working in that area.
All right, so you've talked about cost a little bit. You've talked about location. What other factors?
I'll start a little bit. I also think for me, when I was just looking at law schools in general, I knew that I wanted to practice in New York City, so just based on a lot of job opportunities and a lot of connections. So looking at the big picture, I went on schools' websites and also looked at outcomes such as employment rates, bar passage rates, because obviously going to law school, your end game is you want to get employed doing something that you like, so that was really important for me. And obviously St. John's had such great numbers in those areas, so that attracted me to applying to St. John's as well.
How about, and I'm combining some questions from our audience, student journals? Like, did you look at student journals prior to choosing a law school? Experiential opportunities, clinics, externships, et cetera. Talk about those factors too. We've had a couple of questions come up in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that has to do with admissions and their interactions with you during the process. So for me, a huge reason for coming to St. John's was just feeling that welcoming, that feeling of friendliness through even the emails that were going back and forth between myself and the admissions department. Ultimately, leading up to a tour here where I was told about all the different clinic opportunities and all the different journal opportunities, and just that welcoming nature just rung the entire time. So that helped me make my decision.
Yeah, and to jump off of that, I mean, that's like Charles said, for me also, looking at any clinical or journal opportunities. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I didn't really look at journals when I was applying, but I did look at clinics and any student organizations I could join. And especially as a 1L, I mean, you are going to be mainly focused on studying because it's going to be something different from what you're used to doing in your undergrad career. But even as a 1L at St. John's, you can start getting involved. Even though most of the opportunities require you complete the first year, there are some minute things from student organizations as well as Claro that we do here in the Queen's Civil Court. So as a 1L, you can actually go with supervising attorneys and you're going to be helping like actual clients that day in court. So those are little small things here and there that St. John's actually has. And then as a 2L or 3L, we have few clinics, in-house clinics, as well as some partner clinics outside of the school. that are great opportunities to actually put into practice what you've learned that first year at St. John's.
And as far as information about these opportunities go, during 1L you have the opportunity to go to a number of events where these organizations, groups, clinic opportunities will be presented to you, and you'll get to make those decisions ultimately after 1L.
So two things. One, we've got a flurry of questions coming in, which is fantastic. You guys probably will not get to all of them in our half hour. Do you want to give them an email where somebody will get back to them? Like we'll keep track of the questions that you don't get to and make sure we reach out to people if we can.
Yeah, of course. If you have any questions after this, you can email admissions directly at lawinfo@stjohns.edu.
That's great. Had a couple of questions come in about rankings and whether the rank of the law school or the rank of a law review impact your ability to get a job. And specifically somebody asked, is there really a difference between 70 and 90?
I mean, for me, I looked at rankings when I was applying, I'm not gonna lie, but it wasn't a deciding factor for me. When you kind of want to also keep in mind, you usually don't want to start looking at those that are at the tail end, and also look at maybe online reviews from other students and reach out to students like through Facebook, for example, or LinkedIn. You can reach out to alums or current students. So rankings are things that I looked into, but I personally didn't focus on them when I was deciding.
Rankings weren't really big for me at all, and definitely not in the job prospect. Obviously, like when you're interviewing with employers, they know what your law school is about, they know their reputation. But for me, with St. John's, we have such a huge alumni base and a big networking group that's how I really got my interviews and my job. So my questions were more tailored towards, how do I like St. John's, what are the classes that I'm taking, and I made connections that way, and rank really didn't come up a lot.
Yeah, rankings are always the starting point with this sort of process, but ultimately you have to think about some of the things that we've mentioned as far as location and where you want to be and what you want to do, and those are more important than I would say that.
Okay, I think now I'd like to talk a little bit about my personal experience with St. John's, just because I feel like it really helped solidify my decision to come to school here. So some of the things we've all been talking about is, looking at location, looking at the cost of the school, looking at bar passage rates. Those are all things you look at generally, but what really helped solidify my decision was when I came and visited St. John's. So as I mentioned, I played softball in college, so my schedule didn't allow me to come to an actual admitted students day. So I reached out to the admissions office, and they set me up with a student on a Saturday. And as you know, law school is really busy and students are studying all the time. So the fact that someone volunteered their time to take me around the school was really great. I got to talk to a lot of students, I had lunch with them, and I just felt really welcomed here. People asked me questions about myself, what type of career path I was looking for, and they really took the time to get to know me. And any follow-up questions I had, they were answered right away. So I came from a small college, a family feeling, and I was really looking for that when I came to law school, and I got that immediately when I came to St. John's, and it just felt right.
Yeah, I was gonna also echo what Antonia said. Culture, as I briefly mentioned before, was basically the deciding factor for me. I came to an admitted students day, and St. John's was probably number 2 on my let's go to law school list. But when I came to admitted students day, actually, I spoke with professors and students and actually the dean. And what Antonia said about that family feeling, and even the students helping each other, and that's something that hasn't changed. My 2 years in St. John's have been that way. You're always being helped by your classmates as well as upperclassmen. Was definitely a deciding factor, and I was looking for that feeling, but at the same time I kind of wanted a bigger campus, because for Pace University I went to the Manhattan campus, which is in the middle of Wall Street, so there's really not a campus, it's 2 buildings. So I wanted that closed campus feeling, which is something you actually get here. Like St. John's campus is huge and it's great and big, but then at the same time, like the law building, you get that family feeling and close-knit.
I agree. Retweet.
What about if you can't visit? You weren't able to visit, were you, Charles?
I was not able to come to an admitted students day, but I got to schedule a later visit, and the same thing. I just felt that familial culture. I just felt like this was a place where I'd make friends, and this was a place where I would get mentors, and all of that has happened. So.
We did have a question if somebody can't visit. Let's say they applied to a school in California, they're not going to be able to get there. You mentioned some of the people you interacted with, faculty, students, professors. Are those the people you would recommend that they try to set up some type of communication with?
I mean, I would definitely start by reaching out to the admissions office and explaining to them that you can't go in person, and they would very likely put you in contact with someone that you can talk to. And you can even ask them. I would suggest, like, is there a current student you can put me in contact with, a professor who would be willing to speak with me? Because you also don't want to, like, professors and students are also busy, so it would sometimes be weird getting this random person, like, sending you a private email, but at the same time, we here in St. John's are, like, willing to talk to anyone about our experiences and any questions you have. But I would definitely start by reaching out to the school's admissions office, and they're probably going to have someone that you can contact.
Just to echo that, I was here for a short period of time, so I had a lot of follow-up questions that I couldn't think of at the time. And actually, after speaking with admissions, I had gone, when I was here, I had gone through the clinic, so I got to see some of the in-house clinics. And admissions actually put me in contact with one of the clinical supervisors. So we emailed about different clinic opportunities. I talked to a current student here. And I mean, even now as a third-year student, I've answered emails from prospective students asking about, public interest work, because that's what I'm passionate about. So I'd say here at St. John's, if you can't visit, definitely reach out to admissions. You can get our emails. We're willing to answer any questions as well.
Sort of an interesting question, and you're on the other side of it. Somebody asked whether your LSAT score has any bearing at all on what you do, or preparing for the LSAT, or the content of the LSAT has anything to do with what you do as a law student.
No. I mean, I'm going to be honest, my LSAT score was not the best. So I would encourage you to, it is an important factor, and you should definitely take the LSAT seriously and do as best as you can. But it's not your entire application. And that's where everything else from your personal statement to letters of recommendation come into play. Letters of recommendation were something that were very, I would say a biggie for me. Since I had been working for 4 years, I was out of school for 4 years, and it was kind of weird. So my supervisors at the time were the ones that actually wrote my letters of recommendation, and they put in a good word for me. What you study for the LSAT has nothing to do with what you're studying and doing in law school at all.
Yeah, at most it teaches you, how to focus and study in preparation of law school.
Right.
But the content.
I would say it's the preparation and studying for the LSAT, which is somewhat similar to what you'll be doing studying for a law school exam, because it'll take hours and time to do it, but not the content at all. What else? So alumni, outcomes, location.
Are there any more questions?
What were your best experiences in law school? Most valuable, interpret it however you want.
Well, we have a diversity gala every spring. That's definitely one of my favorite experiences.
I'd say mine is definitely clinical work. So right now I'm actually in a year-long prosecution clinic, and I work at the Queens District Attorney's Office. It's 4 credits each semester, and it's very experiential learning. Like, I feel like I'm prepared to go into practice, and that's something that's really unique to St. John's. We're one of the only New York City law schools that partners with the Queens District Attorney's Office. I've actually gotten to do a full trial by myself this semester, with just a supervisor there with me to answer any questions. We have a student practice order. So I'd say St. John's has a lot of opportunities for experiential learning, which is great. You really learn how to put your skills to use before you start your career.
Yeah, I would echo what Antonia said, and I haven't gone to the diversity gala yet. I am definitely going this year. But along with the clinical opportunities, because I did a clinic last semester and it was a great experience. You're basically handling the clients by yourself with supervising attorneys, but they're basically there to help you. You're the ones calling the client and speaking with the client. That, as well as the many opportunities that the Career Development Office puts you in contact with for summer internships. I applied, and I believe you did as well, to the New York City Bar Association, the Diversity Fellowship, and Charles and I actually got picked.
Yeah.
And we got placed, and that was one of the best experiences because we got placed at different employers. You don't select, and I was placed at Jones Day, the firm here in New York, and as a 1L, that's something that's usually rare for you to work in a law firm. So that was a great opportunity, and I'm actually going back this summer.
Couple of questions about life outside of law school, like factors to consider. You had mentioned the big campus, for instance. What do you do? There were questions about intramurals or clubs or cultural activities. Where do you live and what do you do outside of law school, and how important is that to you in selecting a law school?
It should be very important. I think everyone, especially 1L year, should have a life outside of law school to maintain your sanity.
True.
And part of that is just making sure to designate some time to do your hobbies. For me personally, I enjoy writing, all types of writing, so I'm always jotting down something, and that's what keeps me going. Also, groups at school like Balsa and other affinity groups or other clubs, like those sort of things that are not so academically focused that help as well, or that add to that sort of law school lifestyle.
Yeah, for me, so I live in Brooklyn, so I'm further away from the campus. So that was something, for example, that I took into consideration also because it'll take me longer to get to school. But it's also a good way for me to mentally get away from the studying because I would just study at school and then at home I would relax. Like I try not to do anything school related. And then getting involved, like Charles said, in affinity groups. For example, I've been involved in the Latin American Law Student Association, and this year I'm the vice president, and I was involved in the Public Interest Center a lot last year as a 1L. So those are things that you definitely take into consideration, especially because, like Charles said, you want to keep your sanity. 1L is stressful as it is, so you need your you time, like my me time, even if it's one day a week, to not do anything law school related and relax.
And that's actually emphasized here in professional development.
The development,
1L year. They teach you how to schedule your days, your weeks, and definitely emphasize the importance of you time and doing what you want to do.
I'd say you do. You spend a lot of your time, definitely first year, studying. So that's going to be no matter where you go. Law school is definitely, you have to put in a lot of time and effort. But I'd say you still have to find something you like. Like I like going to the gym, so I fit that into my schedule. We have a campus gym here that I can go to, so it's conveniently located. And also, the law school does promote like wellness. Like we have wellness week here for law students where there's healthy snacks. We'll bring in therapy animals, which is a super big hit. So like massages, yeah. So
especially before finals.
So we really do promote, taking care of yourself, and just like we've been talking about, we do have this family feeling. So we are really making sure, like if we see one of our friends that's really stressed from studying, we're like, oh, let's take a coffee break. Like we really are checking on each other to make sure we're doing well.
And shout out to you, Charles, from Bernard. Do you know?
My brother. He's next up.
That's awesome. Okay, we're coming up on the end of our time. Why don't you summarize the advice you'd give to people in selecting a law school and provide a last minute tip if you have one?
Okay, definitely think about what you want to do. You don't have to have an exact answer, but I think the importance of where you want to be is something to consider heavily. Also, what we were just speaking about, a place that will allow you to have your personal time or that allow you to do things outside of academics. Because one, I will be very academically focused, and so you want to consider that going into it.
Yeah, I would say you'll get through it would be my tip. You'll get through the application process and you'll get through your first year. It's gonna get frustrating and you might think that you were not gonna make it, but just remember that many did it before you and a lot more will do it after you. So
I'd say definitely look at the big picture, look at where you want to practice, maybe what, practice areas you're interested in, do your research, and if you can't visit, definitely reach out to the admissions office with any questions.
Can you repeat the email?
Yes. If you have any questions following, you can email lawinfo@stjohns.edu. And thank you so much for tuning in. We really hope that you got something out of this. We hope you learned about St. John's and choosing a law school, and feel